Hey everybody, let's play around with Flex just a little bit. In this video, I am going to make a container that's going to hold an image, it's going to hold a subhead, it's going to hold some paragraphs for text and probably a caption as well. And the way I'd like it to work is I'd like the image and the caption sitting on the left side, and then the paragraphs or text sitting on the right side. And then above both of them, spanning across the entire top of the container, I want to have the subhead, the heading. When we do this, we need to think about what's going to be containing what. As you've learned so far, Flex is all about having a Flex container and then deciding where its children are going to go and how they're going to behave. In this case, I want to have an image with a caption right below it. I want to make sure that that's going to be able to sit to the left side of a series of paragraphs. So the image and caption behaves as one unit. The several paragraphs behave as another unit. And then the heading is going to be up above them. So I got to think about what things are going to be flexed and what things are not going to be flexed. All right, I've got a basic layout here, sort of the basic template that we've been using all along. I've got a wrapper, which is going to wrap up all of my content. You can see my footers down at the bottom, my headers at the top. I've got a nav, which I haven't really done anything with yet, and ULs, LIs, and links in there. And then I've got a main with nothing in it. If I take a look at this in the browser, I've got to find my code here. It's not going to look like much at all. I don't have any style on it yet. And there's not much content. You can see my header, my nav, and my footer. Let's start building the architecture for our container thing. A lot of times what we're going to do is we're just going to use divs to work as our Flex container that's going to hold all of our stuff. Sometimes you could use something like section, or you could use a side, but this isn't really a full section of a page. It's not an aside, which is going to contain a whole lot of things. I might put this or several of these as kind of like a gallery inside of the aside, or I might put this in a section that's going to have a whole bunch of other stuff in it that's kind of connected to it. But this is kind of a standalone small module. So I'm going to use a div. And I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it image container. Not a great name, but that's what I'll call it for now. And what this is going to contain, it's going to contain my H2, which is going to be at the top of it, because I want it to be the heading for this entire section. Okay. I said that I wanted to have an image with a caption, so it makes sense to use a figure and figcaption for that, doesn't it? I'm going to go figure. I don't have my image yet, but I'm going to get the markup in there for that. Caption. So that's going to be one of my things that's going to be flexed. And then to the right side of it, I said that I wanted to have some paragraphs. I'll get some lorem ipsum text. I'll just take it from another one of my HTML files here. And bring it over. Okay, so the basic structure right now is I know that I wanted to have an H2, which is going to be above everything going all the way across the image container. I know that I wanted to have a image box with a caption, so I'm going to use a figure and fig caption with an image in it. I know that I wanted to have some paragraphs floating to the right of it. Now let's think about how Flex works. There's got to be a Flex container and there's got to be Flex children. The Flex container is what's going to be directly wrapping up the things that are going to be flexed. Now let's think about the things that we want flexed and the things that we don't want flexed. As I said, I want the H2 to be above everything. And then below it, I wanted the image caption to the left and the paragraphs to the right. So that implies that the things that are actually flexing are just the figure and the paragraphs. Maybe I'll have 2 paragraphs, maybe I'll have 1, but I want to have a group of paragraphs. Okay? The H2, however, is not being flexed. That's going to be above them and going all the way across. So what that implies is that I can't flex the image container. If I flex the image container, then the H2, the figure, and the paragraphs would all work in accordance to the rules that I set up with flex. So if I did it flex row, then the H2 would be leftmost, then the figure in the middle, and the paragraphs on the right. That's not what I want. I want it to have the H2 on top and the figure and the paragraphs down below it. So that means I need to add some extra architecture. The things that I'm going to flex are this and this. So the figure and the paragraphs. That means I need to wrap them up in some sort of a container. So I'm going to go div. I'm going to call it flex row container. And then I'm going to close it down below the paragraph. All right, so now the way this is going to work is that I'm going to flex that div flex row container, and the figure and the paragraph are going to be able to sit side by side. Okay? Let's try that. I'm going to get some style on this thing because right now, if I look at this in the browser, it looks like nothing at all. There's no image in there either, so I'm going to need to get an image. It just looks like, flow content from top to bottom. So I'm going to find an image, and I'm going to find one of my favorite characters. Mr. Sinister. The fabulous Mr. Sinister. So I'm going to save this. And I'm going to put it into the same folder that has my markup. I'm going to put this in here and make sure that it works. There we go. I got an image. Wow, that's huge. I might have to do some stuff with that. But that's what I'm working with. Let's take a look at our styles. First things first, let's handle the image. We haven't really gotten to responsive images yet. But if you think back to the Intro to HTML and Intro to Web Programming course, you might remember me doing this. Width 100%. What this is going to do is it's going to ensure that the image is always taking up 100% of its available space in its container. And so if its container's width is constrained down to like 20% the size of the body, then the image would be 20% the size of the body. This will always make sure that the image expands and contracts for its given context. Okay, right now it's not going to look any different because its container takes up the width of the entire page, right? Its figure does. But if I made the figure narrower, it would shrink down. Let's take a look at our HTML again and see what we're playing with. I have my image container. I'm going to give my image container a background and a little bit of padding and a width just so we can see what's wrapping what up. I'm going to make this thing 50% the width of the entire page. So it's called image container. I'm going to copy this so I don't screw it up. Dot image container. And I said that I wanted to give it a little bit of padding. I'm going to give it 1.5% just to start with. And I said that I wanted to give it a width of about 50% of the page. Now you're going to see that this container is going to constrain the width of all my content because it contains the H2, it contains the flex container, it contains the figure and the paragraphs. So all that stuff is going to get narrower. And you can see the image got narrower. Like I said, it's going to be 100% of its available space. I'll give this a background color so it's a little bit more clear what we're working with here. Sky blue, it seems to be one of the colors I always fall back on. There we go. There is my current container, but it's not aligned the way I want it to yet. It's not flexing like I want it to. I've got my subhead, which is all the way across the whole thing. I've got my image and my caption below it, and the paragraph is down below all of that. I want the paragraph to the right side of that image and caption. So let's take a look at our HTML. I said that if I flex something, all of its direct children will be affected by it. So if I flexed image container, subhead and div class flex row container would both be affected by the flex. So if I flexed it and set it to flex direction row, then the H2 would be on the left side and the div would be on the right side. Let's try it and see what it does. This is not what I want, by the way. So image container, I will go display flex. I'll go flex direction row. Well, yeah, right. So I've got my H2 to the left side of all the rest of the stuff. That's not what I wanted. This is telling me that I'm flexing the wrong thing. I wanted the H2 to go all the way across the top, and I wanted the image and caption to the left and the paragraph to the right. So I got to take that off of there. I'm just going to control exit because I'm going to use it elsewhere. I wanted to have flex row container, the thing that's going to be flexed. So flex row container, and that's going to be display flex and flex direction row. Now that's behaving kind of like I wanted to. You can see that the image and the caption are stacked vertically and the paragraph is stacked vertically. I'm going to throw some more paragraphs in there because what if I wanted to have 3 or 4 paragraphs of text in underneath this subhead to the right of this figure and fig caption. I'm just going to copy this paragraph and paste it 2 more times. And these paragraphs, I would expect them to stack vertically, right? Well, you'd be wrong. They're going to sit side by side by side. Remember, here's the way flex works. Flex is always going to work where whatever item is flexed it's then going to take all of its children and have them behave according to the rules. So these paragraphs are currently children of flex row container. If they're the direct children of the flex row container, then they all have to sit side by side by side on one row. Well, what if I want those paragraphs to stack vertically just to the right of that image and caption? Well, if I don't want them to be flexed, I have to put them in a container, and I'm going to have that container be flexed. What we're starting to see here is that once we start using flex, sometimes we have to use a little bit of extra markup. So right now, flex row container is the thing that's flexed. All the direct children are going to be in that row. So figure is in that row, and each of those paragraphs are individually in the row. So if I want those paragraphs to behave as a group as opposed to individuals, I have to wrap those paragraphs up in a div. So I'm going to open a div above those paragraphs. Let's call it text container, not flex text container, just text container. So I'll open it above these paragraphs and close it below them. I'll put a comment here. And I'm going to put a comment on this one so I'm really clear what closing div is what. And then a comment on this one. I don't remember what I called this one. This is image container. There we go. I put those comments on the closing tags so it's clear what they're closing, and it makes it easier to understand what's going on when they're very disconnected from their opening tags. So now I've got this text container wrapping up these paragraphs, and it is a direct child of flex row container. Flex row container, once again, is the thing that's being flexed. These two things now should behave as children of flex row container. So the paragraphs should be stacked vertically, but they should be sitting to the right side of the figure. Let's see if it did what I wanted it to do. That's exactly what I wanted. This is probably too much text for this image. It's got all this space down here. I don't really like what that looks like. I can style this a little bit differently, but now you can kind of see how you can get groups of things to behave along with flex. If I were to style this some more, which I'm not going to do right now, I would probably do something like change the fonts a little bit. I would center the subhead. I might even put a little different background under the figure. I would probably make the font size a little smaller on this text. There's all kinds of stuff I would do. But now you've got the basic structure of the flex down. So what you want to take away from this is when you're working with flex, you have to think carefully about what's going to be the container that's flexed and what those children are going to be. Remember, when you flex something, the children of that thing are the things that are affected, and the children are the things that are directly contained in it. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos on flex.